Hey heroes, this is your certified brass player Angela,
and your resident string player Darian,
and you're listening to Hero Talk, the show that is here to talk about real life
and real women in music.
Okay, let's get started. You know?
We were eating popcorn before this, and I was like, maybe this is a bad choice.
Nah, it's a delicious choice.
Oh, of course. I'm going to do my best not to subconsciously reach for the popcorn and eat.
They're going to hear us munching away.
Oh, I'm just stress eating.
I'm fine.
Yeah, of course. Even though I'm preparing for an audition. I'm sure you got the excerpts for the USO audition coming up.
Yes.
I've been working on that as best as I can.
Finding that balance.
I know, but I need to practice for the USO audition.
Yeah.
I don't want the imposter syndrome to win and tell me I shouldn't be here.
No, you got it.
I deserve to be a doctorate at FSU, right?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. You do.
Honestly, the thoughts are so real all the time.
I mean, yeah. Especially in academia all the time.
I know. This is why we're here, y'all. So if you need to talk to someone, you're having a hard time, let us know, because you're not alone.
Yes, we're here for you.
Oh my gosh.
To make a circle around women
in music. Yeah, that's what's new in my life, practicing for USO auditions. Oh, and TSO. I have to re-audition for Tallahassee Symphony. Yeah, I only had a 1-year contract with them. Let's see if
You got this. I believe in you.
I'll be pretty busy. And we have a class actually.
Yes.
For Hero. I don't think we talked about it in the last episode. We have what's called Special Topics in Entrepreneurship Project. I think that's the formal title.
Yes.
And the assistant dean, Dr. Greg Jones, is kind of mentoring us, directors for Hero, including myself and Angela. And we have this special topics music course that you can sign up for if you're an FSU student.
Or apply to FSU, sign up for the class.
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Easy as that, right?
Yeah, just get into FSU and you can join the class. It's, just 2 steps.
Just 2 simple
There's
steps.
no little steps in between there at all.
No.
And you can help us with all our upcoming projects. You can be really hands-on, get firsthand experience with a new nonprofit. And we hope people sign up. We have some people signing up. I'm really excited for it. Also, a little nervous.
It's going to be great.
I know, but I'm so excited to kind of Dr. Jones is amazing. And he is very just dusted his hands. He's like, y'all do it. I'll just supervise.
Yeah,
and
it's good for us.
And we're just kind of running with it. And we're going to help set up some of our projects, run our database, get our membership up and running, help with the website and marketing and all that.
Newsletters and all.
And essentially, if you want to sign up, you get very applicable first-hand experience.
Go towards your degree and your career.
You can put it in your resume week.
Join our class.
Yes. So I'll be very busy with that too. Despite also being a TA.
Oh yeah.
Which you are too.
Yeah. TA, I'll be working in the trumpet studio, and then for Dr. Porter in the grad office in Lauren Smith.
Yeah, we only have a couple weeks until school starts. But you were just in Texas, right?
I was in Texas helping my good friend move. She got a visiting professor job.
Right. There. What was her name again? I never met her, but I see her in the trumpet section, repping the 2 women in the brass section.
Yeah. Julia Bell, visiting professor at Tarleton State. Super proud of her. She's one of my best friends, and I'm gonna miss her a lot. But it was nice to have a 15-hour long truck drive with her.
I'm very familiar with the drive to Texas.
Oh, I bet you are.
If you listen to the last episode, I grew up in San Antonio. Since I have a dog, I frequently drive between Tallahassee and Texas. It's a drive, but you broke it up, right?
Yeah, we stopped in Monroe and then went from Monroe to Stephenville, Texas.
See, that's the way to do it. See, I'm stupid and I do it all in one day.
All in one? Oh no.
I don't like coffee, so I power up on energy drinks. It's like the only time I'll drink energy drinks because I'm like, that's the only way I can make that drive by myself.
I live off of coffee.
Honestly, what musician doesn't drink coffee? I'm like the only one.
We gotta get you started.
I don't like it. I don't like the taste.
I feel like a good starter for you would be like a frappuccino.
And that has like a coffee.
No, but you can get a frappuccino I used to work at a Starbucks for a few weeks, and
For a few weeks?
yeah, long story. Anyways,
You're like, this sucks.
didn't
Peace
work
out.
for my schedule.
Sure. we won't talk bad about Starbucks today.
No, I love Starbucks. Please.
Don't come after us.
Sponsors. I'm just kidding. But I worked there for a few weeks and it just didn't work my schedule, so I had to leave. But we made frappuccinos, and maybe I'm spilling some tea here, or maybe some recipe secrets.
Please don't get us in
No,
trouble.
I'm just kidding. I'm not. But there's like I think this random company that I've never worked with before would put this coffee syrup in their frappuccino, and only one of their frappuccinos. And so it was like the slightest hint of coffee or caffeine in your frappuccino.
You see,
And
okay.
you can't taste it.
I think I ruined my chance of liking coffee. I actually drank a cappuccino once. I was on my way to Austria because I was playing in Austria for a music festival for like a month, right? And I had a layover in Ireland, and I got myself a cappuccino. I was like, I'm gonna be fancy. I'm on my way to Austria, and I have a layover. Worst time to do it because I didn't have any water with me.
Oh no.
And then I got on this like little plane to commute, and I swear, after I finished that cappuccino, which I didn't fully enjoy the entire time it went down,
Oh no.
just because I'm not a big coffee fan. And
Yeah.
I'm sure my stomach was like, what the freaking hell did you just put in me?
Yeah.
Because on this flight, I was trying not to vomit the entire time. Because I had
Dang.
like coffee breath and it tasted horrible.
Oh no.
And I was dehydrated. I was jet lagged. Ever since then, I was like, this is not for me, y'all.
We gotta start you with a sweet iced latte.
You know, I drink green tea sometimes. Does that count? Is caffeine enough caffeine for you?
I guess. I mean, I guess do what
you know,
would
I'm
like.
24, almost 25, and maybe I shouldn't be caffeine addicted.
Maybe not. Maybe. Yeah.
I'm already a night owl. I mean,
True.
if I want to get my morning started, even the caffeine from green tea doesn't help. I am so slow moving in the morning.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, same. Without my coffee.
I know. I'll even get up early, and it takes me like an hour or two to actually feel like I can get something accomplished.
We're gonna make you an iced latte, a sweet iced latte. I'm not even gonna tell you. I'm like, drink this chocolate milk, Darian.
It will not taste like
Oh,
chocolate.
you don't even know.
Let's get into some of our questions. So we
Yes.
were posted on our social media, our Instagram specifically. So follow us on our Instagram. Quick little shout out to at hero.musicians on Instagram. Follow us, please. And we, every now and then, usually once a week or so, we post questions that you're free to answer on our story. And we'll post your answers as well and talk about them on the podcast, which is what we're doing right now.
We want to know more about you.
Yes.
We're creating a circle around women in music. All right. So
Yeah. So our question was, what new topics should be taught in music classes? What was the first answer?
first response was, we need to learn more about music written by minorities.
Very true.
Yes.
The whole classical canon is white guys.
Yes. Yeah. Very true.
Super well deserving. Bach, wonderful composer, should be in the classical canon. Beethoven, awesome. There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
being white guys. But what about like, I don't know, Chevalier St. George, black composer, usually called like Black Mozart.
Yeah. Yeah. I had in my undergrad at Troy University, we, go Trojans. We, sorry, I have to say that now. We have a world music culture class. And so we talked about all music besides the Western canon, which is very, very interesting. So I feel like a lot of colleges don't have something like that integrated into their curriculum. But I was fortunate enough. Did you have something like that in your undergrad?
No, actually, which is sad. I've had more experience with it in my master's. We had a class with Dr. League, who is in the ethnomusicology department here at FSU, and he focused on music in South America, which we focused on Brazil specifically.
Oh, okay.
When I was in this class my first semester, and I learned a lot. I mean, composers I didn't know about, especially ones from Brazil and in South America. And I've learned a lot more of composers, especially composers of minorities, on my own, actually, because as a violinist, we have so much repertoire. And I'm like, why do we stick to the same guys?
Yeah.
Why do we stick to the same pieces? I'm like, I discovered like Florence Florence Price, American Black composer, amazing woman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't we toss her into the mix when we're in music history?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think we should have. I mean, I think a separate class is great, but why is that necessary? Why can't we just like briefly talk about it?
Yeah.
Like, why can't we be like, oh, and during this time, instead of talking about just like Scott Joplin, what about Florence Price?
Yeah.
Or talking about Dvorak, or, you know, throw in someone who's not white.
Yeah. I think I had like a fortunate upcoming, because in my master's at Ithaca College, go Bombers,
You're always repping.
in my music since 1800 class, which was a challenging class nonetheless, but we did talk about Scott Joplin and then Florence Price, and
Oh, really?
yeah, we talked about all the different composers and representations of gender, and the professor just kind of put it in casually, you know, like it was just like, it is a part of history. It's nothing like, whoa, a woman did this. Like, of course he mentioned like, yes, there's a woman composer or whatever, you know, but it wasn't like a game changer. I mean, it was, but.
Our next response to our question, the person goes, how about learning about compositions that aren't opera?
Yes.
Honestly, though, I kind of agree. I mean, when I was at Belmont during my undergraduate music history courses, I felt like all I learned was about like Tosca, Carmen, La Traviata, and I'm like, the Mozart operas. It's as if like that's all that propelled music forward.
Yeah.
Like all music history surrounded opera. I'm like, yeah, we talked about Beethoven and Bach. What about like Mahler and the Tchaikovsky symphonies? Like, now next question. Okay, you want to read it?
Emphasis on expanding the canon in both ways. Music did not live from 1650 to 1900s.
No true words have ever been spoken.
I know. Yeah, I know the person that wrote this response. And
do you? It's supposed to be anonymous.
I know. Oopsies. But they told me what they wrote. So, and they have very strong feelings about this.
It seems like it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
Oh, same.
Yeah. I think they just need to offer classes that talk. I mean, it's hard to talk about like.
There's so much music.
I know. It's just so much to talk about, and breaking it up into sections. I mean, it's probably the best thing to do, but also like going back to like the broad idea of learning about how music was developed.
And I also think it can start at an even younger age than college classes. Like I remember like baby music classes and only learning about like Mozart and and I only thought classical music was just like one thing. I didn't even realize there's eras. Like you can at least like dash it in there and be like, there's Renaissance, there's Baroque, there's, and like say the word Baroque. I do it with my students. I'm like, it's broken Baroque.
Baroque.
It's not broken. It's amazing music, but it's one way to get kids to remember it.
Yeah,
and then like classical, romantic, because it's brand love, and you know, the rest of the names aren't as fun. Like post 1900 and modern.
Starts with the teacher.
Truly though.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would have known more of that because I actually did have a class at Belmont that talked specifically of medieval and Renaissance music. Really interesting. Also a fun fact, a lot of the music during that time, especially medieval, there's a lot of music by women during that time because a lot of the composers were nuns. Because that's what they did. They composed music for worship. Like Hildegard, I always feel uncomfortable saying her last name. Binion?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Nun, who's actually a saint now. Also possibly first representation of lesbian love, because a lot of her music was of like admiration for women. And some scholars believe she had a nun that she was in love with. I was reading about her, just fascinating. I read about her when we were learning about her in my class, in the specific class. I still remember her because I thought it was super inspiring. But I think it's really cool that actually nuns put a lot of prolific music out just because that's part of what they did for worship. That was another tangent.
An informative one though. Thank you.
You can read about her on one of our posts. Hildegard, what an awesome babe.
Yes. I mean, like, I think it's cool that colleges do have options of, not all of them, but like teaching courses about a specific composer. Like, I wish there was more, but it's kind of harder to find that
And then what decides why that specific composer?
Yeah. And then like that, the professor that taught the Charles Ives course that I he literally wrote a book about Charles Ives.
That must have been really cool.
About how he was connected with He loved baseball. And it was
Really? I didn't know that.
Connected with baseball. Yeah, I love Charlie.
Charlie.
we're tight.
Yeah, Charles Ives, if you're listening from the beyond,
from the beyond,
we love you. We like your quirky stuff.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Especially with female composers, contemporary composers too.
Yeah, there is not that I can think of. Hopefully, changing a single class that has talked about contemporary female composers.
Yeah. I have a soft spot for them. Like some of my favorite composers are contemporary female composers. Augusta Reed Thomas, if you're listening, I want to talk to you and I want to interview you because I love your music.
Yes. Get her on.
Love her. She's one of my favorites for sure. I listen to her music all the time and I've programmed her like 3 times.
Yes.
We're working to put a database of female composers together for something that we'll offer for our members on Hero. That's gonna be a long time coming, because there's a lot of women who did not get recognition.
Yeah,
and again, because we're not talked about in music history, and trying to find those women out there who are composers that we need to put their name out there. Last response we have into in reference to the question, what new topics should be taught in music history classes? The response is a 2-part. It was like learning about other music genres of music and to actually thrive as a musician outside of the academia. Yeah. Outside of academia. So they kind of had 2 responses. I remember this was one person who gave 2 responses. We'll tackle the first part first. It says learning about other music genres of music. So it kind of ties into what we were just talking about.
Yeah, literally everything. Yeah, we were talking about.
Like we need to learn more about Spanish composers. I mean, we talk about Viennese school. We do touch on like Russian and French. We talk about Debussy, Ravel. But what about Spanish, Latin American folk music, Romani music?
Oh, yeah, I think if we're gonna just add another course to the curriculum, if we just could do that to make it so easy, adding like a world music cultures class to all curriculums would be nice. And that just
comes back around though, like why isn't it standard?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to make everything standard though, I know we can't have everything standard.
I want it to be
as much as we want it to be, but
slowly I think our idea of classical music is expanding though.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the last question I think also kind of ties into, because they're like how to thrive as a musician outside of academia. And I think I've talked to Dr. Jones about this, who is actually, like I recently told all of you about, who's helping us with Hero as kind of like our mentor. He's a big proponent for entrepreneurship training for musicians. I took his music entrepreneurship class, and that's one reason why I actually got the confidence to try to launch Hero. Yeah, because no one really talks about how you have to market yourself, like how you're I mean, as a freelance musician, you are your company, like you are your product that you have to market. I think it's crazy that that's not always talked about. No. It's just like, practice and you'll be fine.
It's not a standard class. It should be. There are presentations being presented in front of colleges. There's like at conferences it's becoming a bigger topic, but having a class, I took a pedagogy class here at FSU for the grad students. It talks about this kind of stuff. It's very nice, but I think it should be taught to the undergrads as well. I think there is one. I think I could be wrong, but I think there is one that was taught about entrepreneurship to undergrads, but having that like as a regular thing for every college curriculum would be very beneficial.
Yeah, I remember even in my undergrad, our capstone for the seniors who are graduating was finally talking about classical musicians, how to, like write a contract, how you write your resume, your cover letters or your CVs, what they should look like, and I was like, I should have known this before I applied to college.
Yeah, they they just like threw that into random classes throughout my time in my undergrad, but it's growing.
I know, and I mean, we have to deal with like social media and everything.
It's a whole new topic.
And I like that's a big part of marketing yourself now. I mean, that's essentially like advertising. Yeah, social media is the new way to put ads out about yourself. Like every post is like an ad. I mean, I've talked to a number of like marketing directors, and they're like, social media is where it's at, which I don't spend enough time on social media, so I'm pushing myself. But I mean, we're actually going to be interviewing someone who is very active on social media as a musician, and I need to ask her questions and get tips from her.
Yeah. We should
so listen out for that tease coming up. We we won't drop who that is quite yet, but super excited to have her. Oh, it's gonna be a girl, y'all. But yeah, we should definitely have more class time talking about this. I could not agree more with this person. But yeah, that's it for this segment. Coming up is Rachel Lumsden. We are here today with Dr. Rachel Lumsden, who is an assistant professor of music theory at Florida State University. Dr. Lumsden is a leading theorist in atonal music, women's studies, feminist theory, and critical race theory. We're so glad to have you here today.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. And I have a happy update to your bio, which is that I just got tenure. So as of August, it's associate professor.
Let's go.
Yay.
Congrats.
Feel the power.
Yes. I love that for you.
Did that just happen? Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Aw, wow.
Yay. So we are so glad to have Dr. Rachel Lumsden here with us. I know you said I'm supposed to call you Rachel, but I know it feels really weird.
It does.
We are
like, whatever.
Yeah, me and Angela are still students at FSU, so it feels very strange to call one of our professors by their first name. We were talking about it earlier, but we were just going to dive right in. All right. Do you want to start us off, Angela?
Yeah. So Rachel, what got you into music and music theory?
Well, gosh, I'll try to do the short-ish version. I always loved music as a child. I mean, I loved to sing along to Broadway musicals, and I did not have a musical family. No one in my family plays music or went to school for music or anything like that. So I actually got started in the public school band program in 6th grade playing the flute, which, funnily enough, I chose that instrument because for that year, for whatever reason, no one else wanted to play the flute.
Wow.
So I knew so little that I thought that flute was this very strange and unusual instrument that no one played. So I started off playing the flute and then went to school, undergrad and master's for flute performance. And then the theory bug kind of took over and the rest is history.
Oh, wow. Well, so how was that transition from flute into like music theory?
Gosh, well, I think if I had known that music theory was a field, I may have wanted to make the switch sooner, but I didn't even know that there were music theorists until I went to grad school in New York. And I went to Queens College, which has a very excellent music theory program. And I just started taking music theory classes. And for me, it's really kind of perfect because I love to write. I love to read. I'm a huge nerd. And I also really love teaching. And I wasn't really feeling very satisfied just kind of playing music and orchestral music and teaching flute lessons. I kind of felt like there was something missing. And then once I started getting really into music theory, I realized, this is it. You know, I feel very excited. So it's really kind of the perfect job for a nerdy musician like me.
I wish I felt that way about music theory. I mean, I'm fine at it, but I don't get as excited.
Yeah, I guess because we like do tests and all, and we're always tested on it. So
it's like the math of the music world.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people think of music theory as the math of the music world because of the undergrad curriculum, because by necessity we have to teach a lot of kind of vocabulary building things where the learning is a lot more black and white, right? But real music theory is that music theorists do isn't actually like that at all, right?
Really?
It's about mounting an argument about how you hear a piece of music, right? And different people can hear music in different ways. So it's more, I mean, there's lots of other things that music theory can be too, but it's a lot more subjective and argumentative and sometimes mysterious than it might seem when you're an undergrad. And I had that experience as an undergrad too, where I didn't know that music theory was anything more than just labeling Roman numerals, right? Which I was good at, but it seemed kind of boring to me.
Feels like there's a good crossover with music history as you talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah, is that one reason that you started your class? And for anyone who doesn't know, she is teaching music and theory analysis of female pieces by female composers.
Yeah,
is that the
right.
formal title?
Yeah, that's right.
So is that why you decided to start this class? That's one of the reasons we brought her in today, because she has this amazing class that is super popular here at FSU. Everyone talks about it.
I do.
And they're like, oh, you have to take this class. It's like so interesting.
Well, I appreciate the love. Yeah, I mean, the feminism and gender studies is really kind of my main research area. And so when I came, the class actually has kind of a funny history. When I came to FSU, the theory area chair, Evan Jones, there's two Evan Joneses at FSU, but he's the music theory and cello Evan Jones, not the voice of Evan Jones. Theory and cello Evan Jones said, you know, we have this class that's been on our books for decades called Masterworks of Tonal Music or something like that. And he said, I think it would be really interesting if you took that class over but made it a class about women composers.
I love that.
Yeah, so we're kind of reframing, I guess, the way that we might think about a kind of core class that's been offered here for a long time. And so I was really excited about that. And I've really enjoyed teaching the class. I teach it every fall.
And I couldn't get into it the one time I tried to get
really?
in.
Oh.
Next
I was a little
year, it does honestly fill up pretty fast. So like the day of registration, just be ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be ready.
And I mean, I think
go.
that's awesome. I think more people need to, try to take a class like this. And I think it's awesome that people are excited to take it. I think that shows how classical music is kind of changing.
Definitely. How many years have you taught that class?
Here, I've taught it, I'd have to go back in the archives, but I believe I've taught it every fall since I've been here.
Oh, wow.
So this will be the 6th year, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
This kind of ties into another question we had that we posted on our Instagram. And what other music classes should be taught in the curriculum for colleges? What do you think about that question?
Gosh, that is a whole huge can of worms.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there's a range of opinions about this, as there are with most things in life. And I tend to be on the more open side of things, which means that I feel like curricula should be modernized and updated, not just for the sake of kind of token additions to classes, like, okay, let's insert a piece by a random woman composer in this one class and we'll have one day about her, right? Not that kind of thing, but a much more open and radical shift where you're encouraging students to think critically about the way that the structures of classical music have evolved and been perpetuated. And that doesn't mean, I want to be clear about this, that doesn't mean that students have to agree with what I think, right? I want to be really, really clear about that. I'm about kind of opening up things for students and educating them so they can think about things for themselves and decide for themselves how they want to fit into what classical music is or could be in the 21st century, right? So I'm not about like trying to preach some kind of dogma to people that they follow. It's about, I'm an educator, right? It's about educating people so that their minds can be more open and aware of things, and then they can make decisions for themselves. So to be a little bit more specific, I guess, there's a lot of anxiety about changing curricula because we have these beautiful pieces that students need to teach, need to be taught, and need to learn, right? I mean, I was in the youth orchestra growing up, and I played Beethoven's Fifth, and that was an amazing experience, right? I love that I got to play Beethoven's Fifth as a 9th grader, right? I mean, that was amazing. It probably sounded terrible, but it was amazing, right? It was amazing to feel that, right? So, rightly, there's a lot of anxiety that people have about, well, if we put new things in, then that means we're going to have to cut something, right? So that's where the difficulty comes, right? What do we cut? What do we keep? What do we not cut? And then also simply with the way that university and degree requirements are, there's very little time in people's schedules already, right, to be adding extra things in. So then there's other considerations of time and things like that. So that's why I think rather than think about this issue kind of superficially in terms of content, my opinion is that it would be more productive to think about ways that we can help students think critically about classical music as a whole and their place in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know that for me, I mean, and maybe this is like what I hope the new generation is thinking, is trying not get rid of the classical canon, but kind of expand upon it and think about why do we have this classical canon? Like, why are these pieces in it? Why do we keep coming back to them? And I do think there's a certain aspect of, societal norms back then, why women and minorities aren't in this classical canon. And I think that's something from what you seem that is important to touch on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think for a long time there was this kind of view of greatness, right? Of greatness and meritocracy. That the pieces that are in the classical canon, the pieces that are in the classical canon, same, are there because they're the best pieces, right? They're the best pieces. And that may be true in some cases. I mean, Beethoven's Fifth is a pretty good piece, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a joke for all the haters out there. It's a really great piece of music, right?
Yeah.
But I think that, in my opinion, that view simplifies what you were just getting at, which is they are wonderful pieces of music, but they also had a surrounding context, patrons, conductors, concert halls, orchestras at their disposal, which made that music able to be performed and accessed by a public that other people may not have had those same opportunities.
Yeah,
right?
women weren't even encouraged to try to do those kind of works.
Yeah, I mean, women couldn't go to conservatory until the very end of the 19th century, right? I mean, in most of Europe, if women wanted to study in conservatory, they couldn't, or they were allowed into conservatory, but they took a totally separate curriculum from the men that was more geared towards teaching and other things. So you're right to point out that there's a question of access here that's really important to interrogate.
Yeah, definitely. So what's a personal story, if you feel comfortable, that is unique to your female experience as a musician?
And a theorist.
And a theorist, absolutely.
Okay. Wow. What kind of a personal story?
It could be from like an experience in rehearsal or
something
just,
funny
Okay.
or something that was
nothing
just,
like intense, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything you want to. We're just curious because I feel like there's this communal experience that women kind of experience, and I think it's important to share those stories.
Right. All right. So I do have some kind of dark stories, but I'm not going to share those here. I wouldn't feel comfortable kind of talking about that publicly. But
fair.
I will say when I was a flutist, I definitely had experiences as a performer where I would play a concert, and my favorite kind of music to play was really avant-garde contemporary music.
Oh, we're going to get along so great.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are concerts where I'm playing like Elliott Carter or George Crumb or like this really
I love that.
intense music. And after a concert, there would always be at least one person that came up to me that under the guise of giving me a compliment, which is nice.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the intention behind it. Like, oh, that was such a great concert. You looked so beautiful playing your flute. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You looked so beautiful playing your flute. And it's so, they didn't necessarily mean it to be demeaning, but it is demeaning.
Yeah.
I've had a similar experience I recently just shared after like soloing with an orchestra. They're like, oh, you look so pretty. I love your dress. And I'm like, I just played a concerto.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A concerto that you had worked for a year or more on, right? Really hard. Did you play from memory? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you played from memory. I mean, you're up there kind of kicking butt, yeah. And then the comment is about the way that you look, right?
Yeah, and of course, the guy who still, the guy, I mean, and it's fine. I think it's like, I sit there and I'm like, oh, thanks. But internally, you're just like, what about everything else? The things I care about.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's lots of issues and problems that many different kinds of musicians are facing right now. But I think one of the biggest challenges is this kind of idea that we're all equal now and everything's okay, right? When in reality, that is not at all the case. Mm-hmm. And comments like this show, I think, how a well-meaning person, mm-hmm. it just kind of reflects how far we have to come, right? When is it that women and people of color will be judged by their skill and talent and not their appearance, mm-hmm. right? I mean, that's just it's just the tip of the iceberg of how far we have to go.
Yeah, of course. And I do think things are changing. Like most of those comments, not to like generalize, come from the older generation. Yeah. And I know that they mean well, and I'm sure you did too. Right. And you accept it. It's just things that I feel like, I hope anyway, things will evolve slowly out of these societal norms.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, it takes Ethel Smythe, who is a famous British composer, said at the very beginning of the 20th century, so more than 100 years ago, I think it was in 1913, she said, like, the curious thing to me about life is how slowly things change.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Brilliant. Wow.
So, you know, change comes slow, but it hopefully will happen eventually.
Yeah. And I love Ethel Smythe. I want to play her violin sonata so bad.
Oh, you got to do it. Nice.
I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Yeah. But so would you say that's like the biggest hurdle that women face in music is just the societal norms that, leach in?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, the problem is a broader contextual one. There's also a problem, I think, in classical music of representation, right? So in music theory, for example, unlike many other music fields, it's still overwhelmingly male. So it's only about 30% women that are members of our national society, and it's been that way for a very long time. So that means that, for example, when I went to master's and grad school, I never had a female music theory teacher.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And often I was the only woman in the room. And so I think that being the only one is really challenging and can be traumatic. Actually, I think especially if race is involved. I'm white, so I don't have a full understanding of that, but I think that there are additional complexities in classical music because of this issue of representation, because it is quite overwhelmingly white, and in some cases overwhelmingly male.
So does expanding the classical canon start in the classroom or on the stage?
Oh man, that's a chicken and the egg question.
Yeah, and is expanding the classical canon a phrase that we would want to use? But
no, I like expanding. I like expanding the canon. Yeah, I think it's both, right? In some cases, it will begin in the classroom. For example, I feel like classroom teachers often feel like they don't have a lot of power because of the structure of the university or the content that they have to get through, right? I always tell, especially my grad students, that you actually have a lot of power, even as an undergrad theory teacher, because you're able to introduce your students to new music and new composers that they might not have heard before, right? So there might be cases where a student takes a theory class and maybe their teacher was playing music by Florence Price before class started, or Hale Smith, or Tanya Leon, or any number of other composers. And then the student might find out about that composer and then play their music, right, later. I think that that's great, right? There might also be cases where you have studio teachers that are encouraging their students to learn repertoire by women and people of color that then music theorists and music historians find out about because they've heard a great recording of it, right? So it's intersecting, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Coming from like an educational standpoint, do you think that is kind of like plant a seed and like makes them more curious?
I hope so.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, you don't really know for sure.
I mean, sometimes if the theory class is at 8:00 in the morning, right, the students are just like glad that they made it through the door.
Yeah, I get that.
To get to class. But yeah, I mean, I hope it's about, education should be about instilling curiosity in students. But it's not just playing examples, right? It's also using examples by a wide variety of composers in your classes.
And what would you consider the pedagogical advantage to teaching non-canonical pieces?
Wow, I can't list all the advantages. I mean, I think
I guess depends on the piece.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it depends on the piece. I think one thing that's really important to me as a teacher is to open students' ears, right? I want students to hear things that they haven't heard before, to think about music in new ways, to hear things in new ways, right? And so using music that students haven't heard before is a big part of that, right? I mean, that is really exciting and fun. I think another thing that's really important relates to something I said earlier about the critical thinking, right? So using pieces by composers who students may not know is really good for building critical thinking, because there may not be good theoretical techniques to analyze those pieces yet, right? I mean, one reason that the same kinds of pieces get taught in theory classes is because they illustrate the concepts that are being taught really, really well, right? It's neat.
Yeah.
It's neat.
Yeah.
But students can often become frustrated, especially once they move into master's or doctoral work and they sit down and try to analyze music that isn't in their textbooks or isn't being used in their theory classes. And then they have this experience of, OMG, what the heck am I supposed to do with this piece?
Yeah.
Because the techniques that I know don't work well for this music.
That's what it feels like in atonal music theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's a great example, right? There's a textbook by Joe Strauss, who's a great guy. Hi, Joe, if you're listening. My dissertation advisor.
I hope so.
Wonderful music theorist. And he wrote what, in my opinion, is the best post-tonal music theory book out there. And one great thing about that book is that the examples work really, really well. But they're very carefully curated and they're very carefully chosen. And then the second you try to move outside them and analyze other sorts of atonal music, it's a hot mess, to speak frankly, right? And so I think using pieces that are new by composers whose music hasn't been analyzed before can give students that experience of what it actually is really like to sit down and analyze a piece that no one has analyzed before.
Yeah.
It really is difficult.
I took a class in my master's, and it was an atonal class, and she let us choose any piece we want from our instrumentation. So mine was trumpet. I chose Peter Maxwell Davies' Trumpet Sonata. Super hard piece for trumpet. There were a bunch of other people in the class that chose other works by underrepresented composers. The coolest thing we did in that class was, besides like picking our own piece, was super neat, was she taught us a bunch of different ways to analyze music, atonal music specifically, and she's like, analyze these pieces any way you would like to. And I've never like heard that or done that in a class before, because I've always been like, in more tonal based classes. So it was very interesting and really neat and less frustrating to kind of do what I want and explain how I got my answers. And I think that was like the best part of it.
Yeah, that's great. And honestly, that's great preparation for later. I mean, if you have to write a master's thesis or a doctoral thesis or treatise or dissertation, you have to do original research, which means you have to do exactly that. Look at a piece of music and analyze it in a way that's new, right? And so that's a kind of small stakes way of getting good at that very, very challenging task.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of my least favorite comments is that from usually people who aren't performance majors or, aren't classical majors, is that music theory makes your creativity go away. That's one of my least favorite comments. And then it's like talking about these kind of conversations you're having now is like, it's so not true. Like, you have to be creative when you're analyzing a new piece of music or want to start looking at a non-canonical piece or thinking about why haven't this composer been researched? Why haven't we looked at it from this perspective? I mean, that takes a lot of thought. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I used to think that, right?
Really?
Before I got into graduate level music theory classes. I also, like I mentioned before, thought music theory was really boring. And a comparison that's frequently made that I think it's not a totally accurate analogy, but it can be helpful for thinking about this, is to think about how people learn languages. I've been studying Spanish for many years, And, there's a certain amount of study where you just have to practice the conjugations of the verbs in different forms. I mean, it's rote memorization, right? It's labeling. You're learning the different verb tenses and you're learning how to conjugate them. And you just have to repeat it and make note cards and do all these kind of boring things. But that's not the end goal, right? The end goal is to be able to speak and improvise and actually be able to talk and communicate with someone. And so music theory is kind of the same way, right? I mean, we have to give students a basic vocabulary of Roman numerals, of set theory, of many other types of things, so that then they can go on and do the really fun stuff.
Yeah. I think that's really fascinating. I'm going to take like a quick turn because I wanted to ask you this because I think it's super fascinating. What was it like editing the Norton Guide to Teaching Music Theory?
Oh, that was a great experience. That was a wonderful experience. If anyone's considering doing an edited collection out there, I highly recommend you do it with someone else, not by yourself, which is what I did. And also pick someone that you really get along with whose strengths complement yours. So I co-edited that with Jeffrey Swinken, who's at the University of Oklahoma, and that's where I used to teach before I came to FSU, so I knew him a little bit, and we were colleagues there. And he's a wonderful person. And so it was a great experience to work with him because we have very different research areas and very different... I hear a leaf blower.
I know.
Anyone can hear that. It's the FSU leaf blowers. They come out during all of my classes. So this is just like history repeating
I know. I was literally just thinking that. I'm like, I'm going to try my best to ignore it. I mean, during our last recording, there was like thunder. And I was like, nope. I was like,
it's okay.
You know what? I thought I got us like a far enough room. I was trying my best. I was like, it's still technically summertime. Maybe there won't be people around.
Who knows?
No, it's fine. I think it gives like an accurate reflection of what it's like to be in a classroom at FSU.
Yeah, it's true.
You never know where the leaf the leaf blower is
going to go. If anyone doesn't know, which you probably won't, we are in a FSU classroom right now.
We are.
Yeah, this is the class, the classroom I was in for like my pedagogy class and everything. So I'm very familiar with KMU 340.
340. It's a good one.
It is a good one. Yeah, there's some really funny leaf blower stories. In some of my classes, sometimes a student will make like a really compelling point and we'll all just kind of be sitting there reveling in the silence. And one time we were all just sitting there kind of reveling in the silence. Then all of a sudden it was like, it was really funny.
It's the joys of music school. It's hard to find silence. And then before we move on to our next segment with you, I just wanted to ask, because your class, it seems super fascinating. I can't wait to take it. So I can't talk from personal experience, but as someone who's taught it many times, do you think that a class like yours should be something that's considered standard?
What do you mean by standard?
I'm thinking like something that everyone has to take that has to be part of like the standard curriculum, not like a special topics course that you can just decide to take.
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I feel like this is an answer that might surprise you, really? But I feel like it's really difficult with curricula because there's already kind of like a lot of requirements that students have to take. And I feel like a class like this should be something that students want to come to rather than something that's imposed on them.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
Right? So that's my personal opinion. However, I do think that there's cases where it's good that classes that kind of have gender, sexuality, race at their core are required for universities as a kind of general ed type of class. I think that can be a really good thing and a really eye-opening thing, especially when taken early when a student comes to university. So I think there are cases where a more general type history class or something like that could be really good as a requirement. But I wouldn't really feel comfortable with the idea of sort of imposing, like making students take the classes that I teach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would make it less meaningful for everyone involved.
I think so.
Yeah. Would you say that maybe a college would want require a special topic, just one, and have... I guess it would be kind of hard because you would need to find professors to teach these special topics, and that might be difficult, but having something like that, like a world music culture class, if anything.
Yeah, I think that could be really important. And then there would be kind of a selection of courses that they could choose from, right? So if they're really interested in Indonesian music, you know, they could take a class about that. And honestly, at least for music theory, the way that things are kind of evolving in the field right now, most people who are getting PhDs have 2 areas of research interest and specialty. So there's a kind of broadening that's happening in the field right now that's really important. That means that then when people go and do get their first job, they'll be better equipped to teach classes if there's a chance outside of the kind of traditional theoretical topics. So I think it's kind of happening organically, which is
Oh, that's cool.
good.
Yeah. Now we're going to move on to our trivia just to end on a fun note. Here's our cool new sound effects.
I feel like Cinderella.
So we're going to start with some trivia for Rachel. So we have 3 questions and 3 questions each, and it's just who answers the most correctly wins, I guess. Yay, you just get brownie points, whatever. But, they're random, but mostly all music related. So I tried to put like a hard one in there or whatever. So this is like our first real trivia with someone we're interviewing. So you're kind of like our guinea pig.
Welcome.
Yes. All right. I feel like you might know this one. All right. Which composer wrote a sonata for viola? Mozart, Florence Price, Rebecca Clark, or Schubert?
Rebecca Clark.
Oh,
Yay!
so fast.
This one I didn't know, so I'd be super surprised if you knew. What was the best classical album to win a Grammy this year?
I don't even know that. Bang.
No, I don't know that at all. I have to be honest, I don't really follow the Grammys.
That's fair.
Well, I do know the New York Philharmonic was the orchestra on it. That's a hint.
I don't know.
All right. John Adams on the Transmigration of Souls.
Oh.
You know, that makes sense. His music is very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people really like John Adams. Yeah.
I actually listened to it once and made this question. I was like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. All right. This is going to make you think back to your personal history.
Okay.
How many entries did you write for the Encyclopedia of Women in Today's World?
Oh my gosh.
We got this off your CV.
Okay.
According to your CV.
She's asking me about something I did like 15 years ago. For any of you who
It's
are
impressive. You should know.
For any of you who are scholars out there, young like student scholars out there, this just reinforces the point that once you write and publish something, it's very easy to forget about that, because I really have no idea. Okay, I'm just gonna guess. Is it 5?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, boom. Yay. I just picked 5 because it was a nice kind of round number.
That was what was in your CV. So maybe if you forgot one, there could be more. We don't know. All right, now it's Angela's turn.
Okay.
We like to dig into the fact that she's a brass player.
Okay, I like it.
Oh, yeah.
So my first one, what is the scroll?
The scroll, like a... Okay. I'm
on
assuming...
a string instrument.
I was assuming for a string instrument. The scroll, do you know?
Yes, I do.
Oh, no. The scroll on a string instrument is...
It kind of looks like it.
Don't tell her. She's helping her friend out here.
The scroll is the... You said it looks like it, so I'm going to assume... I'm going to look so dumb. It's the peg.
We can edit this out later, right?
This is staying in.
I don't know. I'm editing it. Okay. The peg on the head of a string instrument, that's the scroll, because you scroll it to tune the instrument.
Those are the pegs.
I thought... Okay.
It's the top. It's the part right above that. That's swirly.
Are you kidding me? That's a name?
That's the
name.
scroll.
Oh, my. What? Wow, thank you.
I love these sound effects. They make my day.
Don't feel bad. If any string players, you ask them questions about any brass instruments, I'm sure they wouldn't know the
That's
parts.
fair.
So yeah, I
Don't
mean, when on the episodes we're not interviewing anyone, she asks me brass questions, but I have all the power today.
She does.
So. All right, who was the first woman to win a Grammy?
First woman? Oh, Beyonce.
No,
No?
Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh my God! Why am I? That makes sense. I was thinking too.
I was thinking farther back.
Yeah. When did the Grammys even start?
That actually, I don't know.
Next trivia question.
Yeah, if you have the power, you can ask me that.
Okay.
But maybe I'm prepared now. Okay, last question. So you can at least have 1 point on the board.
What if I don't know it though?
Ouch.
All right. Which composer did not compose a violin concerto? Mozart, Florence Price, Beethoven, or Cecile Chaminade?
You said I could have 1 point. Oh.
I feel like some of these are standard. There's just 2 in there that I want you to choose between.
Oh, say it again, please.
Am I giving her too much help? Mozart, Florence Price, Beethoven, or Cecile Chaminade did not compose a violin concerto.
I don't study that.
I love asking her violin questions. It makes
I
me
know.
so happy.
I was just thinking, like, there's a kind of tension here in your friendship. All these questions are like, I can't believe you don't know this about the violin.
No, it was the same with the brass questions the other day. I was like, I don't know what a natural trumpet is.
I'm going to go with, I feel like this is like, he doesn't have one. But, like, I would assume he does.
The guys do.
The guys do.
No, for sure.
I'm going to go with the last one. What was the name?
Cecile Chaminade?
No, I feel like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
So we have 2-1. So, Dr. Lumsden, you have won our trivia game.
That was actually fun. I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous before it started, but it was fun. It was fun.
It just gives us a chance to giggle and laugh at each other, essentially.
Yes.
I really enjoy having all this power.
I bet you do.
Do you want to do it next time, Angela?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, we're interviewing some more people soon, and so I'll let you.
One's a violinist. I feel like I should have the power.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see.
You know,
We'll
question both violinists and be like,
what's the scroll? I'm just kidding. What's the scroll on the trumpet? I'm just kidding.
I'd be like, wait, you guys have one? I'd love if you guys have one.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. But thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. It was really quite fun.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yes.
And we're going to be hearing more from you later in the semester. Wink, wink for upcoming news.
Yes.
And we're super excited about it. And thank you for being the first person to be on Hero Talk. We hope to have you back soon at some point. And
It was a pleasure.
And I want to take your class.
Yes, me too.
You know, let me slip in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you both so much.